8.5% cut in their wages. They would want us to forget it. But I'm just reminding, because it is important that we do not allow people, we do not allow anyone to distort the facts. That was not all. Many financial hardships were imposed on the population and the public servants, of course, in the population. Let us take, for example, another measure that made vehicle purchase inaccessible for many middle-level public servants by banning the importation of vehicles more than 8 years old. You remember that? Can you remember that? That they banned the importation of vehicles more than 8 years old. In effect, what that did was made the purchase of vehicles inaccessible to public servants, men and women in uniform, in the healthcare system. But they won't want to remember that. Remember, they also made home ownership for the public servants expensive too, by reducing by half the ceiling on mortgage interest relief. You remember that? This amounted to hundreds of thousands of savings annually for many persons. And guess what? They cut that benefit by half. So they made home ownership more expensive by cutting that mortgage interest relief by half. This injustice was only corrected in the first months when the PP Civic returned to government. Do you remember this? Those two measures alone negated all the increases the AP and UFC would have put on the table. Those two measures alone that dissipated the power of the disposable income. So the disposable income was reduced to rubble under the AP. And that's just two measures. Let's look at some other measures closer to home. Let's say a public servant whose children were attending private schools. Remember what happened with them? They were penalized. If the public servants had children attending private school, they were penalized when VAT was introduced on educational services. You remember that? Yes. All the naysayers, the huff and puffers, the conscience of the people that are speaking now, they were silent. They were silent when the VAT on education was introduced. And what this did, this rendered private education more expensive and beyond the reach of many public officers. Oh yes, all that did was to make private education more expensive and beyond the reach of the public servants. At the same time, that was not all. They were not satisfied with this. So what did they do additionally? Additionally, they removed the school. The children of the public servants in the public school system were receiving the cash grant. They removed that also from the children. So uniform transportation was added back to the salary of the public servant. The net effect was that there was never an increase. In fact, there was was a reversal. There was a reversal in the capacity of the disposable income available to the public servant. And what I'm giving you is the facts. My fellow Guyanese, I promise you that we'll be transparent in every measure. This is only our first year, and I'll show you what we have done. And all our commitment in the manifesto will be kept. Mark words this morning. We don't hide from what we do, because what we do can withstand scrutiny. That is not all, my dear Guyanese. Let us remember that they did not only add VAT on education and take away the school uniform grant and the transportation grant. You must remember too that public servants, as all other Guyanese, bore the brunt of the tax increases and new taxes implemented by the AP and UFC when they were in government. VAT on water. You remember that? Oh yes. Yes. Just a few years ago, you were paying VAT on water. VAT on electricity. You remember that? Oh yes. Just a few years ago, you were paying VAT on electricity. VAT on medicines and medical supply. You remember that? Oh yes. Just a few years. Even the boys remember it. VAT on medicines, remember that? Oh yes. All of this was introduced by them. That disappeared their disposable income. VAT on essential foods. All this crippled the spending power of the public servant and Guyanese as a whole. And you know what? You know how you can understand the effect? Let us go back to the records and see how many people built homes during that period. How many people accessed a new loan to do a business during that period? And compare that to just 1 year of the BP government. You'll be blown away. Because now there is more disposable income in the hands of people to do more. Fact. Not fiction. Fact. And that was not enough for them, you know. That was not enough for them when they were in government. Remember, they also shut down the sugar industry, sending out 7,000 workers. They fired 2,000 Amerindian CSOs. And they antagonized the Barbies River bauxite operations, which sent the people away. They closed shop and went away, and which resulted in thousands of workers in that region being laid off. That was still not enough for them. They closed down the call center in Linden, leaving more than 200 persons out of work. In 1 year, we have restored the call center, and by next year, it will almost double that 200 they sent home. We have restored jobs in the sugar industry. We're still not back up to the level. But we're forgetting that this is what we inherited when we came in. These are the facts. This is what the government inherited when we came in. So, what we saw was a dismantling of the burning power of the Guyanese people. What we saw was a disposable income that was in effect zero. And as I said, you can go to the banking sector and review what took place during that period. The level of investment, level of home ownership, new construction, and you will see the story. Now, it is only fair that contrast this with the last year of the PPCB government. It is fair that we contrast it. And I wish to do so. So, in addition to the across-the-board 7% increase announced by my government, we must not forget that the PPP civic government took several initiatives to reverse the effect the APNU AFC measures had on disposable income. And I want to remind us of some of those initiatives that we took. That adds up. Remember the one-off payment of $25,000 made to all public sector employees? What was the net effect of this singular measure? Remember earlier, I told you the net effect of their 5% increase was $600+ million. This one measure, the one-off payment of $25,000 to all public servants, which affected 60,000 employees. You know what was the net effect of that? That raised $2 billion in the pockets of people. One measure wiped it out. 600+ million. One measure put back $2 billion in the pockets of people. The year-end bonus, remember that? Totaling another $1 billion. That was paid to frontline workers in the health sector. And the 2 weeks bonus for our men and women in uniform. The disciplinary forces. Do you remember that?
I was saying about 10, 15 minutes. Don't type anything.
Those who are
Yeah, don't type.
jumping around to twist narrative. Do you remember that?
No, because doing a different speed.
And we still are not at the end of this year. 400 million has already been set aside for frontline workers.
15 minutes.
And we still have announcements to make.
Yeah, another 15 minutes.
And I'm looking at them in their faces now. Do you remember that? Don't allow your political agenda and distort the reality. Let me continue. I'm not good. Let us use the same public servant with the same $100,000 who is now benefiting from his 7% increase in 2021, amounting to $84,000 annually. This is the 100,000, the employee earning 100,000. That same employee received a one-off $25,000. If that employee was a frontline worker, they would have received a further $50,000. Together, if the person was a frontline worker, the payment, this works out a payment of $75,000. 50 plus the 25, which is a 6.25% on the annual salary. 6.25% on their annual salary. Assuming that this public servant has 2 children, let's assume that the same public servant earning $100,000 has 2 children. They would now receive the reinstated cash grant for school children, which means they will receive $90,000 per child, which is $38,000 for 2 children. That adds up to a further 3.2%. 6.5% plus another 3.2% plus 7%. And this will continue to increase because our manifesto promise is to take it to 50,000 per child. So that continuous increase will also see a continuous increase in the percentage. So that's another 3.2%. Then let us assume again the very public servant earning $100,000, he has to pay his utility bills. Remember, we reverse the VAT on electricity, water, and data. So, assuming that the utility bill is at least $10,000 per month, combined, of course it can be more. But let us just assume it is $10,000 per month. That is another $120,000 annually that the public servant is saving. That is going back to the public servant pocket because of the government action to remove the VAT that was imposed by the AP and UFC. This now will work out to 1.45% annually. That saving would work out to 1.45% annually. In addition to this, let us not forget that we gave out a $25,000 COVID cash grant, which works out another 2.1%. So, fellow Guyanese, what I've tried to do this morning is to present to you the factual position. As a people, as a country, we ought to be realistic. And I will give you, in a few moments, the reality that the world is confronting. The reality that the world is confronting. In just a few moments. But it's very important that we understand the facts. Then I'm seeing a next narrative, a new narrative, that the budget had $10 billion for salary increases. How far from the truth? There's a line item that deals with wages and emolument. Dr. Ashti Singh, as time over time, went a pain to explain that this is not only for salary increases.
This is what we will do. We will have a swift rebuttal after this guy distortion of the facts. So we'll have a quick rebuttal. We have Lincoln Lewis with us, and we have some other financial analysts, including former Finance Minister Winston Jordan. So there will be a swift rebuttal to this.
So that very person who may have a degree in economics and earning 100,000 versus someone with a degree in economics at another similar agency working for 120,000 would automatically have their salary move up by 20,000 in some cases. That is another 20% you're looking at. And this is for the specialized skill sets, the specialized educational sets that the country needs. That alone, if a movement like that occurs, is 20%. If you add up all the benefits, that is why we said we are not only concentrating on salary, we're concentrating on welfare too. Because the welfare measures put back more money in the pockets of the public servants, increasing the power of the disposable income. That is the reality. So whilst we are looking at this locally, let's understand the global context. Governments across the world have shifted their focus on preserving jobs. Many governments have cut the public service. Their focus is not on salary increases, it's on preserving jobs, protecting their citizens against the pandemic, and safeguarding the well-being of citizens. That is the focus. In this country, we have not cut any jobs. We have not reduced time, hours of work. We have not reduced pay. We have done none of those, unlike what is happening in the world. Wage negotiations in some countries were suspended. Wage negotiations were suspended and workers were sent home. The United Kingdom, for example, imposed a wage freeze since 2020. Yes, this is the reality of the world we live in, where we have been giving so much to workers. The United Kingdom imposed a wage freeze since 2020. Even though they were hit with relatively high inflation. And not only did they impose a wage freeze, they've already made it clear that you wouldn't see a wage increase until 2022. Yes, fellow Guyanese, this is the world we live in. They will not see a wage increase until 2022. The average wage growth in the Euro area and the European Union, the whole European Union and the Euro area, the average wage growth are 2.1% and 2.4%. 2.1% and 2.4%. Let us look closer home in the CARICOM region. Just look around. Just go and read every single country position. You will see that some countries did not have an increase since 2015. Some saw their last increase in 2018. One or two had increases, and the maximum increase any of them would have had was 4%. Go and look at CARICOM. This is the world we live in. This is the world we live in. So my dear Guyanese, our focus is on strengthening your disposable income. Our focus is giving back more to you, giving to your families, enhancing your welfare, improving your livelihood, making home ownership easier, building a strong, healthy, highly educated society, scholarships for you. In addition to the scholarship, we still have the commitment of making university education free. All of those measures we have to find resources for. So in a comprehensive way, I would say we have outdone most of, if not, the entire globe. And I continue to be grateful for the public servants, the Ministry of Finance, for managing and bringing in a balanced approach to the development and advancement of Guyanese. We're in this together. We are stronger together. I appeal to the union to take off their political hat. Take off their political hat and put on the hat of reality, the hat of fairness, and in a comprehensive way, they too should applaud the government. I've spoken to many, many public servants who are fully on board. I say to all those in public service and all our workers, do not be distracted. Our country is moving positively from strength to strength every day.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
And your government, your president, would ensure that all of you, all of us, are part of the strengthening, deepening, widening of democracy, freedom, prosperity, and ability to live a life that is full here in Ghana. Thank you. God bless you. Enjoy the rest of Friday. Have a great weekend. I thank you for allowing me in your space. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll have a swift rebuttal. This is how we do it. Lots of lies there, lots of political propaganda. You all know it. Some of you, I've noticed, one gentleman says it's a slow day, but in a democracy, sometimes it's good to listen to the other side, and then you rebut what they have to say. That's how you get to understand and you get to break their lies down. We'll be right back with veteran trade unionist Lincoln Lewis to rebut right away.
What is the difference between the ordinary thief and a political thief? Number one, the ordinary thief steals your money, your bag, your watch, and your jewelry, isn't it? But the political thief steals your future, your career, your education, your health, and your business. Number two, the hilarious part is that the ordinary thief will choose whom to rob. But you are the one who choose the political thief to rob you, because we choose them.
All right, good morning, Lincoln Lewis. Let's get straight to the point. Thank you so much for joining us. Such a short notice to rebut the many lies and propaganda there by Irfaan Ali. To begin with, Irfaan Ali is calling on trade unionists, obviously targeting you because you had a very powerful letter recently in the newspaper. Quickly, deal with that issue where he said that trade unionists, leaders like you, should take off your political cap. What is he talking about, really?
Let me make the point that Irfaan Ali, who has been elected president, he's the president. He comes from the PPP. PPP over the years have had a trade union. Trade union is always in the central executive or in parliament. You have had Chedi Jagan, you have had Baisiram Karan, you have had Kumal Chan, you have Sipal Narayan, the president of GAU, who is a member of parliament and a strong member in the PPP. And the issue of politics and trade unionism has always been intertwined in this country, because it is Critchlow who started the march for one man, one vote in this country. So these issues are, that's a no-go. This is trying to pull wool over people. Like this issue here is that Irfaan Ali cannot be telling people, we must make sacrifices, we must take handouts. Yet at the same time, this is a man who live a life like the Shah of Iran, right? He's telling us about what the average wages increases and what have you in the European Union. But in the European Union, no president receives travel on international business on behalf of the state, travels, receives all expenses paid, by the state and yet get $5,000 in your pocket. Pocket $5,000. This was put in place by the PPP government, right? He living a life of the rich and famous. His salary as president, you understand me, is far beyond many of the presidents in this country, either in the top bracket, right? We expect him to deliver. We expect him to deliver and he stop coming and pander with his lies to society. Let me make this point, man. This guy, let me say to you that this guy is out of order. This is zombie economics. This man has no blasted shame come to lie to this nation. Don't tell me we all the previous government accountable. We always talk about the right to collective bargaining. We talk about it every day. This man in 2015, right? 2015 was in the National Assembly arguing vociferously that the previous government must respect collective bargaining, right? He has an opportunity to do it, and he refused. He refused. He must take off not his political cap, but his blasted dishonest cap. This man is a liar, and he must be told that he's a liar. His lifestyle is equivalent to the Shah of Iran. He didn't live as a leader. Look at Angela Merkel. She'll remain in her apartment from beginning to the end, where he live a lavish life that people got to pay for in the State House. So you don't tell me, don't bring nonsense to us. Then you're going to tell me about, you're going to talk about the issue of what the coalition did. Yes, the coalition may have done a number of things. We hold them accountable, but the coalition is not in government now. So I'm not holding the coalition accountable. I'm holding the Irfaan Ali Jack Dio government accountable for what is taking place in this society. They said they would have reopened the sugar industry. Reopened those factories, those estates that were closed under the coalition government. They said they would have done it. He has not done anything. But this man government, he and his government has decided that they are going to take $250,000 and give to people who are not employees. They're not workers. They're not employees of the sugar industry. Right? He gives $250,000 to everybody. He say you're giving that to them. Right? What about the bauxite workers that he talk about who were employed by BCGI in the Araima Kokwani location? What about them? Are they not farmer employees? Are they not equally entitled to the state resources? He tell you about $25,000 that gets given no COVID grant. The number of people who didn't get it. Let him get his facts right.
Getting his facts right, Lincoln, you started off pretty well in setting the record straight. Thousands of people still awaiting that COVID cash grant. Surprisingly, he didn't mention anything about this other flood cash grant where thousands of people have been discriminated and still waiting for. I'm glad that you mentioned the bauxite workers that they have ignored. They've given a selective few the $250,000 extra for sugar workers. Now, stick a pin. Let's welcome former Finance Minister, the Honorable Winston Jordan, with us this morning. Mr. Jordan, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mark. How are you doing?
Quite well, thank you. What Irfaan Ali didn't say to his supporters and to the listeners is that when the coalition got into office, VAT, blood-sucking VAT, 16% introduced by his regime for the 23 years they've been in office. Well, of course, it wasn't for the 23, but most of the 23, they introduced that 16% VAT. He didn't say that the coalition reduced it to 14%. But what he said is that under your government, Mr. Jordan, which you were finance minister, that the coalition introduced VAT on water, VAT on electricity, VAT on medicine. Take a shot at that first, sir.
Well, thank you, Mark, for giving me the opportunity to make a quick response. I first have to admit I didn't listen to what he said. I have this view that very often what they will say is in the realm of propaganda. And typical of Goebbels, if you repeat lies often enough, they tend to become truth. And certainly to certain categories of people, especially supporters, that is what they wish to hear. But very often we reported any number of these lies, but partly because of not owning or not having genuine access to the national media, people don't get to hear our responses. So we often have to thank the Lord that social media exists, and at least some people are getting it, and hopefully that they will spread the message on our behalf, literally. When you go through our budgets, Mark, you will find that we didn't throw in mud and hope that something stuck. We had a carefully thought out plan as it relates to all areas, and in particular, taxes. I don't have to remind people of the mess that taxes and taxation was prior to 2015. There were any number of studies, the last of which was called the Juke study, that indicated the mess that taxation was in Guyana. And you know, and the whole of Guyana knows, that depending on how friendly you were with that government, it depended on the size of the concessions that you were given. And I think from day one, you go back to our 2015 budget, where we made it absolutely clear that we were engaged in tax reform with certain principal objectives in place. One of which was the lowering of taxes through the broadening of the tax base. I mean, when you read the Duke report and you look at the size of the concessions that were given away, yes, given away, because for those kinds of concessions, this country should have been a princely kingdom today, but it was not. And like I said, and as I said also at the 2016 address to the Guyana Manufacturing and Services Association, don't come knocking at my door looking for special favors. If a favor has to be given, it must be given to the entire sector and not to individuals. Absolutely clear. I was reviewing that speech only the other day. And that is how we address matters, that uniformly taxes must be applied and across the board in terms of broadening the sector. So when you're looking forward to lowering of taxes, you still have to meet essential services in addition to other services that the consuming public crave. You have to do that. And to do that, you have to have revenue. The government's principal revenue is taxation, not borrowing. Borrowing must be an unavoidable circumstance. It mustn't be the go-to financing stream. It must be an unavoidable circumstance. You must first and foremost be able to use domestic revenues to promote your national development. And to do that, you have to make certain everybody and every sector pays their fair share of taxes. And so in promoting tax reform in 2015, it is obvious that there will be gainers and there will be losers. It is obvious that to do that, you will mash toes. You will mash favorite persons and prominent persons in certain sectors. But if you don't have the guts to do tax reform, then you will just merely do the talk and never do the work. But as the coalition government, as you've seen in the coalition government, we did the talk and we did the work. And yes, we got blows from our own people, and we got blows, obviously, from the opposition and civic society. Very often those blows were misplaced. I have seen educated people in the society take numbers and use them in a manner that, you wonder where they got their degrees from. I've seen it. I've seen it up to today. They're doing it. You take 7,000, you hear the mantra of 7,000 sugar workers that were fired. Ask them to produce the names of the 7,000 workers. Ask them. They cannot produce it.
In fact, Irfan Ali did bring up that 7,000 figure again. They're throwing that figure around.
Ask them. It should be in the public domain. Produce the names of the 7,000 workers fired by the coalition government. Produce the names. And then all will be satisfied.
I don't think that he can, but we'll get back to the former Minister of Finance, Winston Jordan. Let's head to the trade unionists.
How can you, when a senior lecturer at the University of Guyana, who has just done the study for, I think it's FAO or one of the UN organizations.
ILO.
And he talks about a number 5,200. But the numbers that we got in cabinet was 4,800 or thereabouts. So we ain't gonna quarrel between 4,008 and 5,002.
He doesn't want.
None of the numbers went to 7,000. But you hear that number being used by the government, and you hear that number used by educated people in their weekly columns, their daily columns, and so on, with no regards to truth.
I don't think, and
that is what you got to keep fighting back. You hear about 200 taxes. You hear about the imposition of 200 taxes. Listen, Mark, I produced 5 budgets. I was to produce 6. But they scuttled the 6th one with the no confidence motion. You go through all 5 budgets and you count 200 taxes that are being introduced by this coalition government. Count 200 taxes. Yes, we introduced taxes on water and we introduced taxes on electricity. How many people paid the VAT that we introduced on water and on electricity? How many? Because the manner in which it was reduced excluded the bulk of the population. Excluded the bulk of the population.
But that's not what he was going. He didn't say that. We knew that, but he didn't say that.
Lark, let me finish this point. They then claims credit for removing the VAT when they came into power in 2020. I have debunked this often enough. The problem is I'm a lone ranger where this is concerned. We don't have enough people who are writing on the subject. We don't have enough people who are talking on the subject. It is the coalition government that removed the very VAT on water and electricity and domestic travel that they introduced. The same coalition government. And we did that in April of 2020. Go back and you will see. April of 2020, as part of the pandemic measures, we removed the VAT on water, recognizing that water was an important part of the inputs to get rid of this pandemic. We removed the VAT on electricity, recognizing that a lot of people had to go virtual. And on April the 8th, we removed the VAT on domestic travel. That is traveling into the interior. All of that was done in April. Not in September with the 2020 budget that they produced. It was done in April. But I'm like a lone ranger where these matters are concerned. There aren't many people out there who are responding to the nonsense, the lies, the propaganda that is being produced by this government. But if I'm a lone ranger, I will do it. I will do it. So yes, we put VAT on water. We put VAT on electricity. But at the same time, we lowered the VAT from 16 to 14%. At the same time, we increased the VAT threshold from 10,000 to 15,000, thereby releasing a number of people from reporting for VAT. At the same time, we increased the income tax threshold from 600,000 to 780,000, or 1/3 of your gross income, whichever is higher. At the same time, we reduced the marginal rate of income tax to the employee from 30% to 28%. At the same time, we reduced the corporate income tax from 30% to 25%, as it is today. And I could go on and on and on of taxes that we reduced or removed in our 5 years. I don't have to guess them. I know them. They are in those 5 years of budgets that we produce. And if you go back there, you will see it. Let them name the 200 taxes that they claim that we produce, that we think. Gobellion, if a lie repeated often enough, will eventually become the truth. And it is for the opposition and all those others who claim that they are guardrails and guardians of democracy and so on, if they are true to themselves, to say when a lie is being told to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Winston Jordan, and good points. Also, what Irfaan said was that the coalition introduced a VAT on education, but what he didn't say that it is the same coalition removed it after consideration.
Yes, but what kind of education? What kind of education? We didn't introduce a VAT on public education. We introduced a VAT on private education. Private education. And why? And why? Look at it this way. Private education is in such demand in this country that if you want to charge a kindergarten child $200,000 per term, $200,000 per term, that school will still not be able to fill the number of people who will be demanding that kind of education. At 200,000, that is way in excess of what you pay per term at UG. Yet you have certain private schools that are charging those kinds of sums for even kindergarten schools. So the question here, it means then you have people in the society who are craving the demand for private education, and they can afford it. They can afford it. Now, those who can afford it can't be the people who are working for $70,000 per month. So a tax on private education is not to attack the average citizen who can't afford it. It is those in keeping with equity who can afford it comfortably. There aren't going to be, not to be many takers of people who are willing to pay $200,000 and $300,000 per term for kindergarten, way in excess of what you will pay at the University of Guyana per term. But that is what happened. So we try to cream off some of that excess demand and channel it to improving public education. We even said those in the private sector who are not rich or super rich, but paying through their nose to attend private school, if they can produce their income tax returns, we will make the necessary exemptions through the law. But the private owners of these schools didn't want that because it would put a hole in their collective argument that we were taxing education. They didn't want that. At all times, we were cognizant and recognized the large number of poor people in this country. And we didn't want to upset what they were going through by adding more and more taxes to them. How else do you think that, given the gravity of the situation that we had to contend with in 2015, where for 3 years we ended up giving Gaisuko $1 billion per month, $1 billion per month, where we had to bail out the rice sector after the bottom fell out with Venezuela suddenly pulling the plug on the rice deal. After all that happened to us, we still were able to improve wages and salaries by at least 75% at the bottom, unheard of outside of the Armstrong Award for 1999 and 2000. And let me tell you this one more on this mark. It is Jagdeo in October 2015. Let me read it. I'm going to read it from Demerara Waves, one sentence from Demerara Waves. Opposition leader Barra Jagdeo Monday night vowed to reverse the hefty salary increases to ministers if his People's Progressive Party wins the next general elections. October 2015. They won the general elections, won uplifted commas, general elections, they are in power. 15 months afterwards, they're still paying themselves the same salary increase that the coalition government was pilloried for. So in a short space of 4 months, from August to December of 2020, January 4th, 2021, the PPPC government has increased the salaries of the ministers by 57%. Not 7%, 57%. The 50% which they were to reverse in accordance to Jagbio, plus an additional 7 that they are paying to the workers. Take that and smoke it in your pipe. What is all the Guardians and the newspapers and all them who pilloried? Who pilloried the coalition government, the unions, all of them? Where are they today? Why are they not acting, holding Jagbio's feet to the fire with his promise that if he came back into power, they will reverse the increases? And he was making this in 2015. And he knew the elections would be in 2020 or thereabouts. So why hasn't he reversed the salaries to the pre-2015 increases and let it take the 7%? Because the coalition, after increasing the salaries in 2015, never had a single increase thereafterwards. And so the salary that was increased in 2015 remained the salary at August the 2nd, 2020. Take that, all of you unions and all of y'all. Get up off your behind and hold Jagbio's feet to the fire. Let them reverse the minister's salary to the pre-2015 increase and add the 7% afterwards.
All right, former Finance Minister Winston Jordan, we still have a few minutes remaining because coming up right after this show is the mid-morning show with Gabby and DJ Andre. Lincoln, it seems as though Irfaan Ali came out with his ammunition, so to speak, slingshots shooting at you specifically, but he's just saying union leaders. Why do you think he got so upset over what you did and what you said about this 7% increase?
What Irfaan Ali has not done is to refute the evidence that we have presented. And what he getting personal on this issue. But let me say to him, let me say something that he said. He said, the 10 billion that we're talking about is to give people who may be economists, maybe at $20,000 or so. I'm not moved by that. What I know that is 7%. The 7% represents when you look at the 10 billion, the 7% that you're talking about $4.2 billion of that 10 billion, you know? What Irfaan Ali should do is to engage the unions and discuss this issue. We want collective bargaining, as he has adumbrated in the National Assembly. Both he and Jagbio, they went to the National Assembly. That is in the answers. These people, we just have collective bargaining, because you can talk until the cows come home. You have violated a fundamental tenet, right? You have violated the Constitution. You're in violation of Convention 151 of the ILO, which we have ratified as a country.
Mark,
that is what we need to do. I don't want to tell me from now all these things where the litany of things, lies that he's talking about, the coalition, this and the coalition. The point is, the coalition is not governing this country. That's what we want. And don't tell me that you're going to give some grant and some grant and some grant. I want to tell you something, Mark. You know, all these cash grants, the street that I live in, I can pick out 3 persons together with myself who they never stop what? We never received it. So when people are coming to me to tell me that they didn't get a cash grant, I have to believe, because I have been one of the persons who have not received it. And let me go further to tell you, the cash grant, you don't just decide that you're going to give a cash grant and who you give it to and how much you give it. These are things that the National Assembly must be taken to the National Assembly.
Mark,
You know, Ron, this is not orphanally pocket piece
One quick second.
that he can give out.
I think,
and more so, he
one
is
second.
living the life similar to the Shah of Iran. If you know the story of the Shah of Iran, you will understand what I'm talking about. He living a life of the rich and famous. He getting millions of dollars a month.
We see
and
that.
the man who got protect me when I sleep in this house when the night comes, the man who will have to protect me, that man received less than $80,000
Lincoln,
a month.
I think.
So
Mr.
what?
Clark,
Look at this parity, man. We gotta take something about it.
Exactly.
Don't talk what you're concerned about it. And let me tell you something. All workers, like the $250,000 that they want to give out to the people who are to the persons who are former employees of.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Jordan. Something went wrong with Lincoln.
Not Lincoln, but I know Lincoln made a number of those points already, and I thought we would use this quick time to extract as much information from both of us. Look, on the $10 billion, the government was extremely deceptive. I don't know for what reason. The government keep claiming that they had set aside $10 billion for increases in wages and salaries in the public sector, knowing fully well that that was not true. I don't know what's the reason for lying to the public. They could have easily said, we have set aside $10 billion, a part of which will be used for the improvement of salaries, because that is what always happens. That money that is set aside under the Ministry of Finance is a block vote. And it's used for all kinds of things related to salaries. It is used to pay all the new recruits. Every year, they recruit new medical personnel. They recruit the new teachers that graduating, soldiers, police, all these different people. Those people are not catered for in the budget. So their monies come from the Ministry of Finance whenever they are appointed. And it comes from that vote. People are promoted during the year and so forth. The promotion money increases come from that vote. Allowances, any new allowances, it comes from that vote. All kinds of things, bonus to be paid from discipline services, frontline workers, bonus to be paid, all that comes from that vote. So the hurtful thing is that they never sought to give any indicative sums on these different categories so that the unions could get an idea of what was the intent of the government. Another large sum of money that comes from that vote is the payment of salary increases to statutory and semi-autonomous agencies. So agencies like the Ghana Revenue Authority, the Environmental Protection Agency, all of these agencies get their salary increases from the Ministry of Finance block vote. So when you take out all of that, it's the rest that is left that will be used for salary increases for the public servants, defined here as those working in the ministries, departments, and regions. So they lied to the public, they lied to the unions by giving the impression that they had $10 billion available for salary increases. Hence, they should get the flack that they are getting. If you tell them that it's $10 billion for salary increases, then pay the $10 billion in salary increases.
You know, we are looking at the time, gentlemen. We have a show coming up on the top of the hour, mid-morning show with Gabby. Lincoln, take another couple of minutes to speak on whatever you want to speak on concerning what Irfaan Ali said, all the propaganda, the lies. Go ahead in your closing.
I want the viewership to understand that very clear that the trade union position is on that whatever has been given to those farmer workers of Gaisuku, that $250,000, every worker who has been for some reason have been taken off his job is entitled and must be given to them. And if they are considering that cash grant, then a cash grant must be applied to all the citizens of this country. Let it go across. You don't play politics, not politics, but you don't give people money because you perceive them to be your supporters. This is people, this is state money, this is people's money. And we have to take a strong thing on it. Let me say to Irfaan that look, you know, I am disappointed as a unionist, you know, that as a man who come in front of me as head of government, head of state, to be blatantly lying to us. It blatantly lying, and more so, the appropriation bill that was passed in the National Assembly, we want it becomes law and we want the money from it. The workers must be given the money. You take yours, as former Minister Jordan spoke about the what the increases, you get yours. I remember well they said they would have given the 50% to give it to charity. They won't take it. But still no charity come forward, no charitable organization come forward say they receive this money. And there's no evidence that they did. So what they've been doing is lying to us, lying all the time. And I want to tell you something. I'm not going to sit around and let persons lie on me. I'm going to call it as it is. I'm going to tell, I want President Ali to understand that no, there's going to be no free lunch. You can use the state media to do what you want. But what he failed to understand, that we get a Benz Cup now, we get a Bork, we get a Sherrod Duncan, we get a whole host of media houses of this nature that we can use to respond to them. Thank you, Mark, for calling.
Thank you so much. Also have the Buxton Morning Show with Kadaki. We have Dr. David Hines, all on social media, and a whole host that will rebut whatever lies.
But Mark, Mark, before you close, let me just make this point.
Sure, sir.
Let me make this point. These guys always need to do something. They need to stop and take the mote out of their own eyes. Every time you raise an issue, they tell you about this politics. Let me make this point. Politics determine what the health services in this country will be, what the education system will be, right? And these are two important elements. It determines whether a child is going to born on the 10th or he will born in a hospital. Politics determine those things. So stop this bloody rubbish. We're coming to tell you every time we talk about politics and politics and politics, because that is the world they live in. That is what they have been doing day and night. They can use state resources to muzzle people, to have them not to speak, not to do anything. But they don't want you to talk about anything that they do. They will give you the opportunity. So that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this quick rebuttal, Lincoln Lewis. Much appreciation. Hope you have a great day, but let's get a brief closing remarks from former Minister of Finance, Winston Jordan, on the propaganda and the lies of Irfaan Ali. Briefly, sir.
Yes. I heard somebody said that the shambles that the economy was when they came in. Mark, I would love a shambolic economy that had grown in 2019, the last full year of the coalition government, that had grown by 5.2%, the largest growth in the 5 years that we had, that had grown in the context of very low inflation, that was able to meet a graduated salary increase with 9+% at the top, and I think it's 8.5 at the 9+% at the bottom and roughly 8 at the top. That was able to improve salaries rapidly, recognizing the miserly salaries that were being paid in the public service. I want a shambles economy like that. They talk about the overdraft. The overdraft, as disclosed by Ashley Singh in Parliament in response to a question by Ferguson, was $78 billion at August 2nd, 2020. But by the time the said minister had turned that overdraft into long-term debt through debentures in June 2020, it was $200 billion. That is information provided by Ashley Singh in his half-year report. It was $200 billion. So it had deteriorated from 78 billion in August 20 to $200 billion. That is a shambolic economy. That is a shambolic economy that we have where inflation is rampant. That is a shambolic economy that we have where you have to use as an excuse logjams in supply chains for the rampant increase in cost of living in Guyana. That is a shambolic economy where when you came in, you destroyed the taxation base on which we were building a more equitable society to reward your private sector supporters who assisted you in the 2020 elections. That is a shambolic economy, which today you can't afford to pay more than 7 because you have destroyed the taxation base. It's a shambolic economy when you can't even give the people a one-off, the one-off increases in the back pay, the consolidated back pay. You couldn't give them tax-free as we did in 2018 and 2019 because you can't afford to lose the taxes given the low tax revenue stream that you had. Which is the shambolic economy? The one that you have now or the one that you have in 2019? Go do your survey and ask the people whether they were better off in 2019, whether it was health, education, economy, security, or otherwise, than you are today in 2021. Go get an independent. Go get Pew polls, or not the Bisram polls. Pew polls are one of the more internationally recognized people. Let them come and do a poll here and ask the people whether they are better off, whether they were better off in 2019 in terms of security, education, health, the economy, wages, inflation, and so forth, relative to today. And that will solve our question. And that we will feel in our own hearts whether we were right in terms of what we're doing or whether this government, shambolic as it is heading us into a crash course. Imagine President telling you, brace yourself for 40 increases next year in a country that is supposed to be among the oil giants, in a country where you have a natural resource fund of 600 million US dollars by the end of this year. All I'm saying, if you want to pay that 7 and you want to pay 250,000 one-off to sugar workers who have already got their severance, then take a 20 to 25 million US from the natural resource fund and pay it to all those workers who were fired in August 2020, plus all those workers who are on the payroll today, facing the pandemic and delivering government services. When you do that, perhaps you might be able to recover some modicum of decency. But right now, you're looking indecent.
Well said. Thank you so much, Minister Jordan. Appreciate it so much. And thank you for your swift rebuttal to what the propaganda of Irfaan Ali. Thank you so much, sir. Have a great day. Hope to see you soon again on 107.1.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Have a great day. All right. Former Finance Minister Winston Jordan putting to rest the lies and the propaganda. That sorry about that, it was under the coalition 16% VAT that actually Yep, sorry about that. The same public, this is in closing, the same public servants that they claim that they love, the PPP that is that they have ignored for 23 years. The same sugar workers that they claim that they love, they have ignored for 20 odd years. They have destroyed the sugar industry. They have not created new jobs as they have talked about, open no sugar estates. In fact, they have wasted billions upon billions of dollars from August 2nd last year to now. They're not going to say that. They're just not going to say that at all. And so, look, we are running out of time. Coming up on the top of the hour will be the Gabby mid-morning show with Gabby and her DJ Andre. But later on and straight up, we will deal with them. So let us not try to take up some time, but of the mid-morning show. But that VAT, that 16% VAT that destroyed the economy. Uh, Irfan spoke of the 7,000 sugar workers. That's a lie. What he did say also, another lie, is that they didn't remove people from their jobs. A lie again. Over 3,000 public servants were removed, fired from their jobs. And we can go on and on and on. But we will do so later on Straight Up, right here on 107.1 FM. Don't go anywhere. Coming up is the mid-morning show with Gabby and her DJ, Andre. Mark Bentrap saying, thank you all so much. We just had to put those lies and propaganda by Irfan Ali to rest. It was too early for those lies, Irfan. Way too early for those lies and propaganda. But I tell you what, it didn't work. Those of you who are listening to us on the ground, good morning to you. Stay tuned for Gabby with the mid-morning show and her DJ, Andre. Have a blessed day, but continue to listen to us right here on 107.1 FM. So long.